Everybody, welcome back. X's and Noles presented by Noles 24/7. I'm Trey Rowland. That is Coach Adam Brown. That is Kevin Little. Guys, we are still kind of talking about our big storylines to watch. We are right smack dab in the middle of spring football season. The first scrimmages happened. Sources are talking, chattering. The Noles 24/7 message board is abuzz with information, scoop, and tea. We're going to be talking about moving over. We covered everything on the offense. We're going to move over to the defensive side of the ball. And instead of talking about just specific position groups like we did with them, we want to conglomerate into two big globs for you. First, we want to talk about the video we're going to be doing today is about the questions we have surrounding FSU's front seven. And then we're going to try to take a look at the backfield. Obviously, new defensive coordinator Tony White bringing in a whole entire system, whole host of new players. How's that going to integrate? What are they going to do? But today we want to talk about, in my opinion, the one that I've got the most heartburn about, and that's Florida State's front seven. Adam, am I right to have heartburn about this unit? How are you feeling about the front seven right now?
Yeah, I'm sitting here writing the little blurb article to go with this video, and I immediately am like, the first thing I put was some of the biggest questions may exist in the front seven of the FSU defense. I think that there's a what's this all going to look like kind of question just beyond, that's just a big picture. And then if you're going to get into the smaller, more focused questions, then you're talking about who's in the picture here for the Florida State defense. It's not a position that they've recruited very well. They've done a good job bringing numbers in throughout the portal over the years, but as far as kind of stockpiling talent through the high school ranks, wouldn't say that's been a success for them, though they do have a very talented true freshman in the defensive tackle room this year. But I think the first thing you're going to start talking about is what's it going to look like? Is it a 3-3-5? Is it a 4-2-5? We did a video, it's probably been a month ago now at this point, with some snippets,
informed speculation, I would say.
with some screenshots from a recruiting visit, and that video got taken down. Not sure if maybe somebody got mad because we used a picture from the coach's office. I mean, sorry,
it was online. It's publicly available.
You put it on Twitter. So we are certainly of the belief, and I know Brendan and Chris and Dane and everybody on the site also kind of agree that we're going to probably see more of the 4-2-5 like hybrid defense that they ran at Nebraska, more than the true traditional 3-3 stack defense that White ran at Syracuse.
And we kind of think based on like what we saw in Nebraska, personnel, you kind of are constrained to running that like 3-3 stack. Mostly it's like Syracuse due to the caliber of athlete that Tony White had, which you have access to a higher quality of one theoretically at Florida State and Nebraska. So we don't really know, and we're not at practice. We only have like sources say, but we expected a little bit more 4 down than definitely what they did at Syracuse. But Kev, what about you? How was your, just before we get into like the specific questions surrounding the front seven? Adam laid out a lot of it. What are they going to do? Who's going to play? How are they going to do it? When? Like every single big question out there we have. What about you, man? Are you got some trepidation around this group of guys, or are you feeling pretty confident?
Yeah, I think this group is kind of interesting because it's sort of reminiscent of FSU's offense last year and the questions we had about that, which I guess is a bad sign. There's a lot of guys with a lot of potential here. I think of the world of Darrell Jackson in terms of his potential. The dude's just built different. I mean, 6'5", 340, shoulders as wide as a door frame. The dude's a freak, but he hasn't shown that he can consistently put it together every snap for a whole game, for a whole season. James Williams, again, a guy that has shown to have the chops of an elite pass rusher, but can he be an every down guy for you? Can he be someone that you can sit against the run? And he's gained some weight this offseason. I think to bolster that, is that gonna be a detriment to his pass rushing ability? Can he do both at the same time? Can he step up and be that every down defensive end? And then personnel wise, you're just looking to see Behind those two, who's going to step up? Who's your guy? There's a whole bunch of, again, kind of unproven names, guys who, have shown flashes here and there. But who's going to be the guys who are going to be, if we're going to live with this 4 down front, who are the 2 inside guys going to be down in, down out? Daniel Lyons, again, has shown a lot of flashes. I think he can be as good as he wants to be. Can he take that next step? And there's just that question can be asked about basically everybody on this front 7.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of production. It is very similar to especially what we saw at the skill positions last year on Florida State's offense. You're betting on traits, you're betting on potential, you're betting on flashes, and sometimes that bites you in the ass and it's not great. I don't know. I don't think maybe it would have been a different story when you talked to us at the beginning of last year. I don't think you can take flashes, scale them out with a larger sample size, and just expect an exponential growth in the production. It doesn't work like that. These guys are going to have to, Darrell Jackson, instead of being one of the guys next to Josh Farmer and Patrick Payton, it's he's the anchor of the middle of your defense now. He's vitally important to your run defense. James Williams is your premier pass rushing option. And how is that motor gonna play? How is that bend? How is that speed gonna translate after 35 snaps to mixing it up with tight ends and big offensive tackles? We just don't know. So there's a lot of speculation. Adam, I think the question that I have, and I want to talk to you about it, is that when you talk about the defensive line, we'll get to the linebackers too. This front 7 works a lot together in conjunction in Tony White's defense, as it does in pretty much all of them. Mm-hmm. But the thing that everybody wants to talk about on the defensive line, pass rush. I get it. It's affecting the quarterback is the name of the game. That's why the guys get paid the big bucks. To me, I'm really worried about Florida State's ability to consistently stop the run. We were worried about the pass rush going into the year last year, and it's at some point it didn't matter because you were getting double teamed and your linebackers were getting worked by free running offensive linemen, and you couldn't get to the passer. But what does it matter when you're giving up 6 yards a carry? Do we expect, what's your feeling on the interior of the defensive line and their potential run stopping ability? Will some of this just get cleaned up with a new voice and a new scheme with Tony White?
There's always talent is always the name of the game, especially along the defensive line.
It feels thin there.
Yeah, it feels very thin. And it feels like you're banking on a lot of potential and not necessarily, true production, which was a thing that they talked a lot about, entering the portal season. They wanted to get true production in the portal. They didn't seem to be able to get that all on the defensive line. They bring in true freshman Kevin Wynn, who's a really super talented kid, but how much are you relying on a true freshman defensive tackle? Is he that caliber of talented? I think that remains to be seen, personally, but I know there are some that think highly of him. If the questions about stopping the run, I think to me always are going to come back to Darrell Jackson. Can he be a dominant force in the middle of this defense? And when I say middle, I think a lot of people are immediately thinking line up over the top of the center as a true nose tackle. I don't expect that to be the only place he plays. I think he's going to move around quite a bit. He'll be shaded on the guard some. He will line up over the center some. They'll run some tight front. They'll run some over front. They'll run some under front. They will give you a variety of looks. But the point is he's going to move around, and he's going to need to win his matchup. And are they going to be able to rely on him for 50 snaps a game, 45 snaps a game to go out and be a dominant force? He hasn't been that yet. We do feel like the potential's there. We talked about him when he came over transferring in from Miami, that we think he's got a really high ceiling. I know people that have been in practice and watched him think he's got a really high ceiling. He's got to just get that on the field now consistently all the time. And then I think Kev's right. James Williams, is he a guy that can go out and stop the run? If you're going to play more of a 4-2 look, those ends are going to become more vital. I don't know if they have a jack So who's filling that spot in? But they've got to find guys that can set edges for this defense, and they don't have guys that have done it. They don't have guys that have proven that they can do
They
it.
got one. The kid from Western Kentucky, Deontay McCray, is a pretty good
Yeah.
run defender, right?
Yes,
Now
he was.
you're clubbing
He
up a
was.
level, but that's really
Yeah.
the only one
Yeah,
that's
it
done
really
that
is.
consistently, right?
Yep. So I mean, you've got Amari Williams bumping over to defense from the tight end room, maybe going to split reps between the two. So there's just a lot of questions.
Mhm.
And it's going to be Tony White's job and Terrence Knighton and Odell Higgins who's helping out there still. It's going to be their job to try to get it together. I don't think a new voice necessarily is going to make it happen. It's going to take strain. It's going to take a consistent effort. It's going to take all those cliche phrases for them to get it. The potential's there for them to do it. Whether they do or not, I mean, remains to be seen.
Before I get over to Kev and see what his kind of main pain points areas of concern are, what are they going to ask Darrell Jackson to do mostly in this defense? Like, Adam, what are they going to ask him to do? They're going to ask him to 2-gap, 1-gap. Is his length going to be beneficial for him? Like, are the things that he's going to be asked to do maybe more conducive to his skill set?
I think it'll be a little bit of both. I don't know if it's conducive to his skill set because he's just a talented dude. I mean, so
helps.
I think he can do everything. I mean, I think he can do whatever you want him to. It's whether he can get out there and put it on the field and actually get it done consistently, which has been the problem for him. But we've seen him be effective as a pass rusher. We've seen him 2-gap. We've seen him shoot gaps and get up the field. I expect them to do a lot of 1-gapping. I don't expect a ton of 2-gapping. I think there obviously will be some. They're going to want him to collapse the pocket, though. I mean, that's what they're going to want him to do. They're going to want him to move people backwards, and that's what he can do. We've seen him do it. We've seen him do it very successfully at Miami and at Florida State. It just has to be down to down.
Once every 3 or 4 plays, it's like maybe you're going to have to dial down the spectacularity of the splash plays to get some more consistent, kind of like an Ichiro Suzuki batting approach, like less home runs and more contact. I don't know, but you need a guy who you're relying on to be steady. He needs to be reliable. He needs to figure out reliability and making his presence known consistently and doing his job. So we'll see, because the physically, like, terrifying. It's all there. Kev, what do you think? Before we move on to the linebackers, just defensive line, front seven, like, what's a specific thing that you're really, really intrigued about coming up into 2025?
Yeah, I think we did a good job just covering, like, hey, we need to see some of these guys step up. But I think schematically is just it feels like they've compiled a roster that doesn't really make a lot of sense to me in terms of, like, is this a 3-4 team or a 4-3 team? Are you trying to odd front or even front? It seems like it's kind of stuck in the middle. It looks mostly like an even front defense to me. You have true inside guys, true outside guys, not a lot of, like, hybrid guys. I don't know. It just feels like what I'm a little worried about, and this happens with a lot of these guys that kind of move their way up with these kind of, more ingenuitive schemes, is that they get to the highest level and say, oh, now I have talent. I'm just going to run a 4-3. I'm just going to do the normal thing. When what we saw him do at Nebraska that was so successful was bring different looks, give different ideas to the offense, present different looks. And, like, if we go back to what Adam Fuller did,
I was just about to say that. That's a great point.
Was very multiple. He threw a lot of things at defenses. He was trying to, he came in saying, I'm going to play offense on defense. I'm going to
change the picture. Yeah.
And then we saw them they got really vanilla because they felt like they could just rest on their talent. And I'm worried that I'm hearing some of the same talking points come up. Oh, we have more talent here than we had at Syracuse. Well, Syracuse's defense last year was like, or Syracuse's defense when he was there, it was better than FSU's last year. Like, sometimes, I want to see that ingenuity. I want to see, why don't we just take that talent and put them into positions to be successful instead of just watering it down. And I'm a little bit worried that, they've caught themselves not deciding. I'm a little worried for the identity of the front seven.
It's a little bit of a tween. It feels kind of tweenery, right?
I will just add, I think that your point is fair. I do think, though, that like sometimes you're pigeonholed when you come to a new place too.
Exactly. Yeah.
They've been recruiting for certain things all, for the past 5 years. And now now you've got a new voice and a new coach with new philosophies coming in. Like, they may not have a jack, so they may need to run a more true four-man front as opposed to a three-man front with a Sam linebacker that they walk up and they play him as a jack. Like, they just may need to, this year they may need to tweak. Like, but I think Tony White's shown the flexibility in his time as a defensive coordinator, whether that being at Syracuse, running the true 3-3, and then going to Nebraska, running it there year one, and then transitioning to this four-man look, which does seem to be this four-man, this even front with an odd secondary seems to be the trend in college football. You see Ohio State running it. There's a few others that are transitioning to this style of defense.
What's the benefit of that for the viewer?
Or
why do you think it's catching on so well? Is there like a specific?
Because I think that you can stop. I think you can stop the run better with it. But if you get good enough athletes at those safety positions, then you can also play the pass. You can match up with the pass game really well too. So you've seen a lot of these 4-2-5 teams playing these nickels, and those nickels end up getting picked on in the run game as teams are trying to find ways to adapt to these defenses, and offenses are trying to adjust. So now offenses have adjusted to running the football or putting bigger bodies in there. Well, now defenses are trying to get bigger bodies in at those nickels. Look at the Eagles with like Cooper DeJean and that kind of stuff. So teams are just, it's a give and take in football. Teams are always trying to find the next big thing. And it looks like these three safety shell defenses with an even front as opposed to a three-man front.
The four-man fronts existed forever because if you get Jared Verse, right, you don't want to put him if you're running a 3-down front, you put Jared Verse inside a tackle, he's not going to be able to be Jared Verse, or you put him as a jack backer, which means he's dropping into coverage on half the snap. So like if you have a true pass rusher, this is why things kind of get watered down often as you get more talent, because like you get Jared Verse, you don't want to be multiple with him, you want him to do what he does best. And so balancing that and deciding, all right, we're Florida State, we're going to have athletes. How do we use them? Do we get cute like we did before, which was able to give us some advantages over some of these teams sometimes? Or do we say, no, we've got true athletes, we're going to let them play?
It's a great question. And it will be so interesting as long as they can make it to 2026, what the evolution of the Tony White defense from 2025 to 2026 is. Because like you said, you're dealing with you're cooking with a bunch of ingredients that you didn't buy. It's just like you're making like whatever's in the cupboard and you're trying to whip up a dinner with it. Luckily, Tony White's a pretty good chef and he's got a good track record, so it'll be interesting. Yeah. The interior depth, man, and they didn't really address it in the transfer portal. That worries me. That worries me against some of the running teams you're going to play. Let's move back a little bit to the second half of the front seven and the linebackers, a position that has been neglected through the high school recruiting ranks. And it's a position that has been devalued for a while. It's a position where there's been debates on how important it is. Well, I can tell you as a Florida State fan that when that position is a total black hole of suck, it's pretty damn important because it got picked on consistently over and over and over again. Adam, how do you feel about Florida State's linebacker unit? This is one they did address in the transfer portal with some pretty, and at least from the reports that we're getting, guys like Elijah Herring, the Memphis transfer by way of Tennessee, has been very impressive. You got a guy like Stephon Thompson, who has been with Tony White at both Syracuse and at Nebraska, a name that Florida State was actually linked with on transfer portal cycles of the past. He's kind of like the Adrian Medley, like almost an assistant coach on the defense. Are you worried a little bit less about the personnel that Florida State has being able to fill the specific roles at linebacker that we've heard in the Tony White defense?
Yeah, this is actually like the position on defense I'm the least focused on. I think that they've got production in here. I'm not going to say that it's super talent, but they've gotten proven production brought in here in Herring, Thompson. Um, you've got Juice Cryer, you've got Omar Graham. Like these are guys that have done it. I know people are going to roll their eyes when I say Omar Graham and proven production, but
Well,
it's
end of the year, he
yeah.
don't. It's not all about the Georgia Tech game.
I think
get it,
he's
though.
come a long way, and I think that he's going to be. Those guys are going to be put in better positions to make plays in this new system. Like this is a group where I think the new voice for the scheme itself will help them. I think they're going to be put in better positions as opposed to trying to be space players like they were forced to be. They, you know, Adam Fuller, one of these guys to be space players and big runners, and they went out and got guys that were 5'11" and weighed 240 pounds. Like it just didn't make a whole lot of sense. They didn't mesh
Very plotting.
what the hell they were trying to do with the type of player they were bringing in and what they were asking them to be. So I think that there's going to be a better marriage of skills and scheme there. They're going to be guys that can come downhill and fit the run, not be put in so much in binds quite as much as they were in Adam Fuller's defense. They're going to do some more just true spot drop zone stuff, which is good. It's encouraging. They're not going to be trying to match a bunch of routes and stuff, which is, I like. I just think you got guys there. I did want to just mention like they have a jack position. I don't know whether to put it with linebackers or D line. It's like a hybrid end.
Who do you have earmarked for that right
well,
now?
I don't freaking know. This is that's one like
that is the question for this.
Yeah, it is the question. Yeah. I know Aaron Hester and I want to say Grant Fielder. I believe he's a walk-on. Those are two names that have been brought up by Tony White throughout camp, I think, especially after the last scrimmage. So just two guys to kind of think about there. And we'll see. Maybe that's a position they try to go be aggressive in after spring in the portal. Elijah Herring's a guy that's played a little bit of that too, though. So maybe you see him in some hybrid roles.
Spot duty for a Blake Nicholson or something.
Yeah. I think all in all, you've got bodies there. I think you've got an array of skills, an array of production versus potential with Caleb. I don't know if it's Lavalley or Lavalley. I'm not sure.
Lavalley.
Yeah, just going to go with it. So Blake, like those are guys. I think simplifying the defense and simplifying the linebacker position is going to help Blake a little bit. Curious to see kind of how his spring goes, but yeah, I think all in all, like I think I'm thumbs up on the linebacker room. Not a ton of questions for me there.
It would be. I feel like that this might be a position on the defense where it can be like a market leader in physicality. Like Florida State's defense has been last year particularly. They've been sponges for contact. Like think about how many violent plays that you saw from Florida State's defense last year.
Mm-hmm.
If you can come up with like more than 3, we watch the film every single week. Good for you. Point them out to me. Tell me in the comments below because it was pretty uninspiring stuff with the guys that you brought in, with the production, maybe with some of the things that you're asking them to do. It would be nice for them to kind of lead the charge and make this Florida State defense one that opposing offenses can feel for a couple days after they come to Tallahassee.
Yeah.
Kev, what do you think about this linebacking unit? I'm kind of in agreement with Adam. The ceiling is not super impressive. That's what happens when you've recruited the position like you have for the past like 3 or 4 years. But it feels competent. It feels like they have the prerequisite number of bodies and the things that they're going to be asking them to do. I don't feel like these guys are going to be out of their depth.
Yeah, so that was one big thing about Adam Fuller's defense that kind of presented itself as the years went on. Teams found that they could very easily just get the linebackers isolated man on man with a tight end whenever they wanted to. And with the linebackers they had, that was a disadvantage for Florida State. And you saw just third down after third down, just let's dump it off the tight end, run everybody else off, and we're going to get some space. That's not going to happen in this defense. Like AB was saying, there's more spot drop zone stuff. I think that their play-to-play roles can be kind of simplified because they add complexity before the snap, right? You give different looks, you mix things up. Well, now that allows us to be a little bit more simple when it comes to the play itself. So a lot of times, like, you'll see the inside backers just kind of mugging up to the line of scrimmage and acting as a defensive lineman for a play, and then they're just spot dropping the next play. Like it's pretty simple assignments that is masqueraded by pre-snap kind of junk. Where what AB was saying, and I agree with this, is like the way that Fuller played that 4-2-5, all the matching stuff, all the match quarter stuff they were doing. Well, I've got this gap and I've got this tight end, the number 2 receiver, unless he goes out, and then I've got to pick up the number 1, replacing him inside. And so you're thinking about, you're having to do this man coverage while you've got a gap responsibility. You got to be pretty elite to do that. And there were a few linebackers that I think could do it in their time here, and that's when you saw the defense be its most successful. But when they had new guys, when they had turnover, they just didn't do it as well. I'm personally excited to see Juice Cryer. I think the dude, he's a football player, right? And I think that's what they got with this linebacker and crew. And go look at like NC State, who's putting together top 20 defenses every year with linebackers that are producing. They're not the most talented guys. They live in this kind of odd front, kind of hybrid defense, but you just have to know where to be. You have to be in the right place at the right time. And I think they went out, and I agree with AB. I think that this linebacker crew is going to be serviceable and kind of be a decent, core to build the rest of the defense around if they're functioning the way that they seem to be built to function.
It's true, and we talked about it for years with Adam Fuller. Like he played a very honest style of defense. Offensive coordinators could really, most of the time, have a pretty accurate guess of the look and the assignments that they were going to see. Yeah. And based on the scenario, they ran their best play against what they thought they were going to get, and a lot of times that's what happened. Having somebody that can instill a little bit of confusion in the offense, it makes a defense without that elite, like typical classic Florida State athleticism, it makes their job easier because you don't have to be the fastest guy in the field. If you can wrong foot the offense a little bit, it really helps kind of equalize the playing field. And I hope that that's something that Tony White continues to do, since it got him to be the defensive coordinator at Florida State. Guys, before we head out, anything you want to say? Like, I don't know if you guys want to comment on the potential of this unit. It's like X factors, just kind of like your closing thoughts on Florida State's front seven in 2025.
I think, Jason Jenkins is a guy who came over from Tennessee who's banged up right now. Norvell seems to think he'll be back for the season. He said stuff like that before, and it's not been true. So it's tough to say for sure. That he's a difference maker, or a potential difference maker, in my opinion. But depends on how much time he's actually missing. Whether he's physically ready to go. But that's a guy. We didn't mention Tylon Lee, true freshman that came in that they flipped from Ole Miss. Super talented prospect. A guy I would anticipate playing quite a bit this year, along with Kevin Wynn, another super talented defensive tackle. Lee is an edge type. I just think when you're talking about this group, don't expect them to line up the same look 2-3 times in a row. Like it's gonna be different. They're gonna be moving around. That's what White believes in. I know Kev mentioned that as a concern. I just think that his track record speaks to he's not going to be stagnant. So I would be surprised if he did that, but I do understand the concern about it. Some of the comments about the talent level and whatnot, it can be easy to kind of get pigeonholed into just playing that talent. So I think they're going to move around quite a bit. This is going to look different. It's going to look different from what we saw over the last couple of years, especially the amount of zone coverage that they're going to play versus man coverage. It's going to take them a little bit of time. Like they're really learning a new language out there on defense, and I'm going to be excited what it looks like maybe in the back half of the season as opposed to the beginning. But
Good point.
I do think this is an upgrade in coordinator.
It's going to take some time to gel. And we've seen that even with some of Florida State's best teams, like rife with NFL talent. Like you think of that 2013 team, all those dudes got drafted. But with a new defensive coordinator, it still takes time to figure out how to best utilize these dudes that you've only had a spring and a fall camp with. Kev, anything that you want to add before we head on out?
Yeah, so over the past few years, it feels like we go into the season and we hype the defensive line because there's X talented person, Y
Not
talented
this year,
person.
not for me.
Right, like it's hype, and then every year we have to sit there and explain, like, well, the defensive line isn't looking great, and it's not necessarily their fault. It's because, they're dropping in man coverage every play, so they're really not getting that much help behind them, and that's screwing them over in this way and that way. We're not going to have to do that this year. One, the expectations aren't as high. And two, Tony White's he's going to stop the run first and foremost. Like that's kind of the MO of his offense, which is the opposite of what Fuller was trying to do. So I do think that the defensive line actually is going to look better than our expectations for the first time in a while, because just the way the defense is built is going to support them. Now, the frustrations with the secondary probably is the opposite concern. But, for me, I'm expecting the defensive line, the run stopping to be a pleasant surprise for a lot of FSU fans that are used to watching a bend, don't break kind of Adam Fuller defense.
I'm watching a team just chunk you down the field all the way to the red zone when you ratchet up the intensity. It is going to be different. Mm-hmm. Like you said, pleasant surprises would be nice. Anything pleasant would be nice surrounding Florida State football. And Kev, I think that was a great segue to talk about the defensive backfield, which we will do on our next video. Guys, stick with us if you want to see that video as soon as possible. Subscribe to the channel, put notifications on if you're not on Noles247.com. Guys, everybody's locked out of practice. The only people that have info are the ones with sources. We got sources. Get on the board, and we will let you know everything that you need to know, because if you really want to look cool at the office, this is your chance to look the coolest, because nobody knows what's going on except for you. Oh, yeah, keep chopping. Love you guys. See you on the next one.